The coquettish laughter of a woman came through the phone, accompanied by the faint rustling of hotel bedsheets. My husband, Luke, spoke with a voice that was 30% drunk and 70% arrogant. His words smashed through the receiver like he was tossing out the trash. "I just signed a $500 million contract," he said. "Sarah, a woman like you whose only skills are scrubbing dishes and mopping floors is no longer worthy of me. Be smart, walk away without a dime, and get lost." I was crouching on the kitchen floor, my fingers still gripping a sponge soaked in dish soap. My knuckles were white from how hard I was squeezing it. The woman on the other end of the line laughed again, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. She said, "Come on, honey, stop clinging to Luke. He is a man with a $500 million deal now. You two are not even on the same level anymore." I recognized that voice. It belonged to Jessica, a woman Luke claimed was just a friend he met through business networking. 3 months ago, he said he was taking her out to meet some clients, and I believed him. Throughout our 2 years of marriage, I had emptied my premarital savings to fund his startup. When his mother was in the hospital, I stayed by her bedside for half a month without a decent night of sleep. And in the end, he was holding another woman in his arms and telling me to get lost. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not even tremble. I threw the sponge into the trash can, stood up, untied my apron, and wiped the suds from my hands. I pulled my phone from my pocket. There was a contact saved simply as Dad. I stared at it for 2 seconds before hitting the call button. The call connected, and my father's steady voice came through. "What is it, sweetheart?" I looked at the unwashed dish soap bottle on the kitchen counter and spoke with a tone as calm as if I were commenting on the weather. "Dad, that $500 million contract Sterling Enterprises just signed with Luke's company. I want you to kill it." Luke did not know that the woman he married, the one he thought was only good for housework, was the only daughter of the CEO of Sterling Enterprises. He certainly did not know that the woman he had just humiliated in front of his mistress was not some pathetic housewife, but the beloved heir to his biggest financial backer. He thought signing that contract would send him straight to the top of the world, but he had not even bothered to figure out how he got the deal in the first place. It was his wife who had called her father, pleading for him to help a struggling entrepreneur. My father had only granted the contract as a favor to me. Now I was going to take that favor back with my own 2 hands. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then, my father said something I would never forget for the rest of my life. "Wait for it. Within 3 days, I will have him on his knees begging you." I hung up and stood on the balcony. The afternoon sun washed over me, warm and comforting, but I knew perfectly well that a freezing, bitter winter was waiting for Luke. I picked up my phone and booked a first-class ticket back to my hometown for the next morning. Then, I sent a text to my lawyer. "Prepare the divorce papers. I want every single cent of the marital assets, and I want my initial investment money back with interest." After sending the messages, I took our framed wedding photo off the wall. Stuck to the back of the frame was a Polaroid we had taken at our reception. In the photo, Luke was smiling gently, and I looked incredibly sweet. I stared at the picture and whispered, "Luke, you are going to regret this." My flight was scheduled for early the next morning, but I did not have to wait that long to see him. That same afternoon, Luke brought Jessica home. He had been drinking heavily, his face flushed red like a boiled lobster. He had his arm wrapped tightly around Jessica's waist. The moment he walked through the door, he tossed his car keys onto the entryway table and yelled at me. "Why are you still here? Didn't I tell you to pack your bags and get out? Why are you still lingering around?" Jessica stood beside him, wearing a bright yellow cocktail dress. Her hair was styled in big, glamorous waves and her nails were painted crimson. She looked me up and down, her eyes full of contempt, though she pretended to sound sympathetic. "Sister, Luke's status is different now. Staying here is only going to make things awkward for him. Let us just part on good terms. How much money do you want? Luke will not mistreat you." She said he would not mistreat me, but her tone sounded like she was throwing change at a beggar. I was in the kitchen heating up some soup. Hearing this, I turned off the stove, picked up my mug, and walked out. I looked right at Luke and spoke slowly and clearly. "First, this house was bought after we got married, which means half of it is mine. Second, the startup capital for your company came from my savings, and you are going to pay it back with interest. Third, we are getting a divorce, but it is not you kicking me out. I am dumping you. My lawyer is already drafting the papers. Just wait to sign them." Luke froze. He probably never expected me to speak to him like that. For 2 years of marriage, I had been completely obedient. Whatever he said went. He thought I was still the soft pushover he could mold however he wanted. Jessica was caught off guard too, but she quickly clung to Luke's arm and acted helpless. "Luke, look at her. She is acting so fierce." You are the one who does not want her anymore, but she is making it sound like she is dumping you. Triggered by her words, Luke's face grew even redder. He pointed a finger right at my nose and yelled, "Sarah, do not push your luck. I bought this house with the money I earned. It has nothing to do with you. You spent all your little savings ages ago, and you still want money back? Let me tell you, if you do not sign a clean break agreement, I will make sure you do not get a single cent. Do you believe me?" I held my mug, took a slow sip of the soup, and looked at him like he was a grasshopper jumping around. Suddenly, I smiled. The smile made Luke pause. I said, "Luke, do you really think signing a $500 million contract means you are set for life?" He lifted his chin and sneered. "Of course. Do you even know the scale of Sterling Enterprises? This one contract is enough to feed me for a decade." I nodded, set my mug down, and picked up my phone. Right in front of him, I dialed a number and put it on speaker. The call was answered almost immediately, and a steady middle-aged man's voice came through. "Sweetheart, what is it?" I smiled and said, "Dad, Luke is standing right in front of me. He wants me to walk away without a dime. Do you think we should put a hold on that $500 million contract so he can reassess his situation?" There were 2 seconds of dead silence on the phone. Then, the voice replied, "The contract has already been suspended. The legal department is handling it. The compliance documents his company submitted have serious irregularities. We suspect forgery. I have already sent the auditors in. Do not worry, sweetheart. Not only will he not get a single cent, but he will also have to spit out everything he has made so far." With a loud clatter, the car keys dropped from Luke's hand onto the hardwood floor. Jessica's face turned completely pale, and her grip on his arm naturally loosened. Luke stared at my phone, then stared at me. His lips trembled for a long time before he managed to squeeze out the words. "Who is your father?" I picked up my mug, finished the last sip of soup, wiped my mouth, and stood up. I grabbed my already packed suitcase and walked right past him. When I reached the front door, I paused and looked at him over my shoulder. All the color had drained from his face, and fine beads of sweat were forming on his forehead. I said, "Luke, you told me to walk away with nothing and get lost. Now I am leaving. Are you satisfied? Oh, I forgot to tell you. That $500 million contract you signed was only given to you because I called my dad. Now, I just called him to take it back. Guess if I can make that happen." The moment the door clicked shut behind me, I heard Luke's agonizing scream echoing from the living room. "Sarah, come back here." Then came Jessica's panicked voice. "Luke, did you not say your wife was just an ordinary housewife? How could her father be the CEO of Sterling Enterprises? Did you lie to me?" I did not look back. I rolled my suitcase into the elevator. As the doors slowly closed, I looked at my reflection in the mirrored walls. There were no tears, no anger. There was only the calm of finally waking up. For 2 years, I thought I had married for love, but I had actually married a joke. Now, the joke was over. I got into a cab and gave the driver the address for the airport. As soon as the car left the neighborhood, my phone started vibrating relentlessly. It was all calls from Luke. I did not answer a single one. Then the texts started pouring in. The first one read, "Honey, I was wrong. I drank too much and spoke nonsense. Please do not take it seriously." The second one read, "Jessica is just a business associate. Nothing is going on between us. Do not misunderstand." The third one read, "Please tell your dad not to suspend the contract. If this deal falls through, I am finished." The fourth one read, "Sarah, I am begging you. For the sake of our marriage, please help me." I read them one by one without replying, then tossed my phone into my purse. I leaned my head against the window, watching the city streets blur past. I had walked these streets for 2 years, buying groceries, picking him up from corporate dinners, taking care of his sick mother. I used to think my sacrifices would be rewarded, that his affection for me was real. But that phone call today felt like a bucket of ice water poured directly over my head. I finally saw clearly that he never respected me. He treated me like a disposable rag. He wanted to throw me away the moment he felt he no longer needed me. When I arrived at the airport and sat in the departure lounge, my phone rang again. This time it was Jessica. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Jessica's voice came through, trembling and close to tears, completely different from the arrogant woman she had been just hours earlier. "Sarah, I am so sorry. I really did not know about your connection to Sterling Enterprises. Luke never told me. We really are just normal friends. He drank too much today and said all those crazy things. Please do not take it to heart. Could you please just say a word to your father and tell him not to cancel the contract? If that contract is gone, Luke's company is dead, and I will not know how to explain it to him." Listening to her hypocritical rambling, I almost laughed out loud. Normal friends? Would a normal friend laugh on the phone and call me sister? Would a normal friend cling to his arm and call him by his first name so intimately? Would a normal friend let a man hold her while he calls his wife to tell her to get lost? I spoke in a flat tone. Jessica, I do not care what your relationship with Luke is. As for the contract, that is business. I have no say in my father's company. If you feel wronged, go cry to Luke. Do not bother me. I hung up the phone and blocked her number. By the time my flight landed, it was already dark. I walked out of the arrivals terminal and immediately spotted my father's car parked by the curb. George, the family driver, was standing by the vehicle. As soon as he saw me, he hurried over to take my luggage. Miss Sarah, your father is waiting for you at home. He canceled all his evening meetings and said he was going to cook dinner for you himself. My heart warmed, and my eyes stung. Since I was a little girl, my father had never let me suffer a single grievance. But for the past 2 years, I had married Luke against his better judgment. He had not said much out loud, but I knew it had broken his heart. When I walked into the house, my father was busy in the spacious kitchen. He was wearing an apron and his reading glasses, placing seasoned steaks into a hot cast-iron skillet. He looked up and gave me a soft smile. You are back. Go wash your hands. The steak and mashed potatoes are almost ready. I stood at the edge of the kitchen, looking at my father's graying hair. The tears I had held back all day finally fell. Hearing my sniffles, he turned around, let out a heavy sigh, and walked over to pat my shoulder. All right, stop crying. You are home now. Do not worry about that Luke situation anymore. Dad will handle it for you. I wiped my tears and shook my head. Dad, you do not need to handle it for me. I will do it myself. Does he not think that signing a $500 million contract makes him untouchable? Then I will make him watch exactly how that contract vanishes. Does he not think I am not worthy of him? Then I will show him who is truly unworthy of whom. My father looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. He did not say anything else and turned back to the stove, but I could see the faint smile on his lips. It was the proud smile of a father watching his daughter finally grow up. After dinner, I sat in the study, opened my laptop, and began digging into all the financial records of Luke's company over the past 2 years. When he first started his business, I was the one who helped him register the LLC. I found his accountant. I connected him with his initial clients. That company had my fingerprints all over it. I knew all his client resources, his cash flow, and his shady behind-the-scenes maneuvers. I had just been too lazy to dig up the past. But now I was not going to hold back. I stayed up all night and uncovered 3 major issues. First, the financial statements his company submitted last year were heavily inflated. He had exaggerated his revenue by 40% to secure low-interest commercial loans from the bank. Second, he and Jessica were definitely not normal friends. 6 months ago, he used company funds to buy a luxury condo under Jessica's name, writing it off in the accounting books as business entertainment expenses. Third, the compliance documents he used to bid for the Sterling Enterprises contract were absolutely forged. He had literally copied another company's project history and slapped his own logo on it. I organized all this evidence, sorted it into 3 separate folders, and saved them onto 3 flash drives. As dawn broke, I sent a message to Arthur, the general counsel at my father's company, detailing exactly how Luke had forged his qualifications. Arthur replied quickly, Miss Sterling, these materials are more than enough. We will issue the formal termination notice first thing this morning and report him to the federal regulatory agencies. I then sent a message to the commercial bank manager who had processed Luke's loans, someone I had originally introduced him to. I asked if he knew about the inflated revenue figures. The manager was a sharp guy. He understood immediately and replied, Received. I will look into it. He added, Do not worry, Miss Sterling. The bank does not do business with fraudsters. By the time I finished, the sun had fully risen. I took a shower, changed into clean clothes, and stood by the window looking at the morning light. I took a deep breath. Luke, you thought your life was just taking off. What you did not know is that I have personally cut the cords to your parachute. At 9 in the morning, Luke called again. This time, his tone was completely different from yesterday. Gone was the arrogance and the swagger. Instead, he sounded cautious and desperately eager to please. Sarah, where did you go last night? I looked everywhere for you. I called so many times and you did not answer. I was worried sick. I leaned back on the sofa and spoke flatly. I'm at my parents' estate. You do not need to worry. Luke quickly replied, Then I will come pick you up. Let us talk about yesterday. I really drank too much. There is absolutely nothing going on between me and Jessica. She is just someone I know from the industry. Do not overthink it. Let us go home, okay? Listening to him, I only felt absolute disgust. Yesterday he told me to get lost, and today he was begging me to come home. He changed his tune so fast. I said, "Luke, do not bother coming to pick me up. I am not coming back. The divorce papers have been sent to your email. Read them when you have time, sign them, and mail them to me." Luke panicked. Divorce? Who said anything about a divorce? I never agreed to a divorce. Sarah, stop throwing a tantrum. Can we just go back to living our lives? I let out a short laugh. Luke, when you had your arm around Jessica and called to tell me that I was not worthy of you and that I needed to walk away without a dime, that was not what you said. Do you remember? Luke stammered. That was just angry nonsense because I was drunk. It does not count. Sarah, do not take it seriously. I said, you might have been speaking angry nonsense, but I am taking it very seriously. I have decided to divorce you. It does not matter if you sign the papers or not. I will take this through the courts. By the way, Sterling Enterprises should have sent you the official termination letter by now. Have you not received it? The phone suddenly went dead silent. A few seconds later, I could hear Luke's breathing turning heavy and frantic. He lowered his voice and asked, "What do you mean?" I said, "Exactly what it sounds like. Just giving you a heads up that your $500 million contract is void. Because you forged your compliance documents, Sterling Enterprises is not only canceling the partnership but also reporting you to the regulatory boards. You better brace yourself. Your life is about to get very difficult. Sarah." Luke's voice suddenly spiked an octave, filled with a frantic, near-insane desperation. "Are you crazy? I spent 6 months negotiating that deal. Do you have any idea how much I sacrificed for it? And you ruined it with one sentence. Are you even my wife?" I replied calmly, "Luke, when you told me to get lost yesterday, why didn't you remember I was your wife? When you bought a condo for Jessica with company money, why didn't you remember I was your wife? When you committed bank fraud by faking revenue for loans, why didn't you remember I was your wife? Now you want to talk about being my husband? It is too late." A loud crash came through the speaker, like a phone being hurled against a wall. Then I heard Luke cursing, followed by Jessica's panicked voice. "Luke, what is wrong with you? Stop it, you are scaring me." I did not listen to the rest. I ended the call. For the next 3 days, Luke acted like a madman, calling and texting me constantly. I ignored all of it. He went to the lobby of my father's corporate headquarters, begging to speak with the executives, but the security guards threw him out. He went to the bank manager, begging for an emergency line of credit to keep his company afloat. The manager told him the risk management department was reviewing his files and all funds were frozen. He went to his suppliers, begging them to front him materials on credit so he could fulfill his smaller orders. The suppliers told him, "Look, Luke, it is not that we do not want to help, but you still have not paid off your previous invoices. We cannot risk it." By the 4th day, his company completely ground to a halt. He could not make payroll, debt collectors were swarming his office, and the bank was breathing down his neck. He sent me a massive block of text. The gist was that he knew he was wrong, he never should have messed around with Jessica, and he never should have mentioned divorce. He begged me to let him off the hook. He said he was willing to give me the house, the cars, and all his equity in the company. All he wanted was for me to ask my father to reinstate the contract. I did not reply. Instead, I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to my attorney. My lawyer told me that this message served as excellent proof of his marital misconduct, which would heavily favor us in the asset division. On the 5th day, I flew back to the city we used to share, not for Luke, but to finalize the paperwork. I arranged to meet my lawyer at a downtown coffee shop. Just as I sat down, Luke somehow found out where I was and stormed in. He was wearing a wrinkled dress shirt, unshaven, with dark, sunken eyes. He looked nothing like the arrogant CEO from 5 days ago. He rushed over and almost fell to his knees in front of me. "Sarah, please. I really know I was wrong. Just restore the contract. I will agree to whatever you want. If you want a divorce, I will sign. You can have all the assets. Just beg Sterling Enterprises not to press charges over the forged documents. Otherwise, I am really going to prison." Looking at him in this pathetic state, I felt absolutely nothing. I remembered 5 years ago when he first held my hand and promised to treat me well for the rest of his life. I remembered 3 years ago when he slipped a diamond ring onto my finger and called me the most important person in the world. I remembered 2 years ago at our wedding, crying as he thanked me for marrying him, promising to spend his life repaying my kindness. But I also remembered 5 days ago when he held another woman and told me I was unworthy. I remembered how he took my savings to buy a luxury condo for his mistress. I remembered how he and Jessica laughed at me over the phone. I remembered the sheer arrogance in his voice when he told me to leave with nothing. I picked up my coffee, took a sip, and looked at him. "Luke, You are not going to prison, because I am going to give you a way out. But remember, this way out is charity from me. You sign the divorce papers. I want half of the house, the cars, and the company shares. I want my initial investment back with interest. And that condo you bought for Jessica using marital funds? That is being calculated into the settlement too. You agree to all this, and I will ask my dad not to pursue the forgery charges. If you refuse, we go to court. And when we do, you will not just lose money, you will end up behind bars. You choose. Luke's face completely collapsed. He opened his mouth to speak, but could not form a single word. Finally, he just nodded. Seeing him yield, I stood up, grabbed my purse, and turned to leave. He called out behind me, "Sarah, are you really this heartless?" I stopped walking but did not turn around. "Luke, I am not heartless. You betrayed me first. I am just protecting myself." Walking out of the coffee shop, the sunlight was blinding. I squinted and got into a waiting cab. As the car drove through the familiar streets, I suddenly realized this city held nothing for me anymore. I pulled out my phone and texted my dad. "Dad, everything is sorted. I'm flying back tomorrow." My dad replied with a single word, "Good." The next day, sitting on the plane and looking at the clouds outside the window, I felt incredibly light. I thought I would be heartbroken. After all, it was 2 years of marriage, 2 years of genuine devotion. But once I truly stepped away, I realized how exhilarating it felt to walk away from someone who was not worth it. Luke lost his $500 million contract. He lost half his company shares, he lost the house and the cars, he lost everything he thought he had a firm grip on. And Jessica? She thought she had hooked a wealthy catch, only to discover the man was rotting from the inside out. The luxury condo with her name on it was seized by the courts. She was left without even a place to sleep. Karma always collects its debts. It just arrived faster for them than I expected. After returning to my father's side, I formally began taking over the company's operations. My father was getting older and had wanted me to take the reins for a long time. Previously, I was so stubborn about being a good wife to Luke that my father had eventually relented and let me go. Now I finally understood. A woman's greatest security is not marrying a rich man. It is being the rich woman. It is not depending on someone else to feed you, but having the power to feed yourself and thousands of others. I spent 3 months familiarizing myself with every aspect of the business. From project negotiations to legal audits, from financial reviews to supply chain management, I learned everything step by step. If I did not know something, I asked. If I lacked a skill, I practiced. My father's veteran executives initially worried I was just a spoiled heiress padding my resume. 3 months later, no one dared to underestimate me again. In my 6th month back, Sterling Enterprises secured a massive government contract to build a $2 billion green energy campus. As the lead executive on the project, I led a team to inspect the construction site. It was a windy day. I was wearing work boots, a hard hat, and a safety vest, standing with the contractors to discuss foundation blueprints. Suddenly, someone called out from behind me, "Sarah." I turned around and saw a man standing a few yards away. He was wearing a cheap, wrinkled suit. He clutched a manila folder in his hands, and his hair was a mess from the wind. It took me a moment to recognize him. It was Luke. He was much thinner than he had been 6 months ago. His cheekbones jutted out, and deep wrinkles lined his eyes. He looked like he had aged 10 years. He looked at me, his eyes filled with complex emotions. His lips moved for a long time before he squeezed out a sentence. "What are you doing here?" I looked at him, my voice as flat as if I were speaking to a total stranger. "I am the lead executive on this project. Of course I am here. Why are you here?" He looked down, gripping the folder tighter. I started a small contracting firm. I wanted to see if I could bid on some minor excavation work. I nodded, said nothing else, and turned back to discuss the blueprints with the contractors. Luke did not leave. He stood nearby, staring at my back. I could feel his gaze, but I did not turn around. After wrapping up the discussion, I headed toward my SUV. He jogged over and blocked my path, his voice low. "Sarah, can we talk?" I looked at him. "Talk about what?" He opened his mouth and his eyes suddenly went red. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I really know I was wrong. I thought a lot over the past 6 months. You were right. I betrayed you first. I never should have gotten involved with Jessica. I never should have said those awful things. I never should have tried to leave you with nothing. I regret it. I regret it to death." I looked at his bloodshot eyes and felt absolutely nothing. Regret? If regret actually fixed anything, we would not need laws. If an apology was enough, who pays for the genuine love he trampled over? I said, "Luke, are you done? If you are done, I am leaving. He panicked and reached out to grab my arm, but my security detail immediately blocked him. He was forced to stand in place, his voice breaking. Sarah, I know I am not good enough for you anymore. I have nothing left. I just wanted to say I am sorry. I am truly sorry. I gave him one last look and said coolly, I heard your apology, but I do not accept it. Luke, the person you wronged is not the woman standing in front of you. It is the foolish, loving Sarah from the past. She is dead. You killed her yourself. The woman I am now has nothing to do with you. With that, I opened the car door and got in. As the SUV pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Luke standing in the dust, his head bowed, his shoulders shaking. I did not know if he was crying, but I did not care. People make mistakes, but some mistakes can never be undone. He lost me, he lost his company, he lost his house, and he lost everything he valued. He got exactly what he deserved. We drove a long way. My assistant quietly asked, Boss, that guy back there. Was that your ex-husband? I nodded. Yes. The assistant hesitated, then asked, He looked pretty miserable. Do you not feel bad for him? I looked at the scenery flying by the window and offered a small smile. No, because his misery is his own doing. I have no obligation to pay the bill for someone else's mistakes. As the car passed through downtown, I suddenly spotted a familiar figure near a commercial strip. Jessica was wearing a drab gray hoodie, her hair tied in a messy ponytail, crouching outside a cheap convenience store. She was gnawing on a stale bagel. Next to her was a plastic grocery bag containing a few bottles of water and cheap instant noodles. She looked at least 5 years older than she had 6 months ago. Her heavy makeup was gone, her nails were bare, and she looked thoroughly defeated, a far cry from the glamorous mistress she used to be. I told the driver to pull over. I rolled down the window and looked at her. She looked up and saw me. She froze, panic flashing in her eyes, and quickly lowered her head, hiding the bagel behind her back like she was terrified of me seeing how far she had fallen. I did not humiliate her. I did not hurl insults. I just looked at her for a few seconds, then rolled up the window and told the driver to keep going. As the car accelerated, an old saying crossed my mind. You reap what you sow. Luke planted the seeds of betrayal and harvested bankruptcy. Jessica planted the seeds of greed and harvested poverty. They thought having $500 million made them invincible. They thought they could trample my dignity and throw me out like trash. What they did not realize was that the trash they threw out was made of gold, and what they treasured was the real garbage. In the days that followed, Luke tried to find me a few more times. Sometimes outside the corporate tower, sometimes in the parking garage, sometimes outside restaurants where I had business lunches. Every time, he dressed neatly, his hair combed perfectly, trying desperately to prove he was still a respectable man. But I knew his respectability was long gone. His tiny new company barely scrapped together enough minor jobs to pay for his meals, let alone his rent. One day he cornered me outside my office building holding a bouquet of blood-red roses. He offered them to me with a pathetic, eager smile. Sarah, these are for you. Happy birthday. I glanced at the flowers but did not take them. He said, I knew it was your birthday today. I used to celebrate it with you every year, and I did not want to miss this one. We were married once. Even though we are divorced, we can still be friends, right? I looked at him and found it almost laughable. He thought a divorced couple could just be friends. He thought a bouquet of flowers could erase all the damage. He thought saying happy birthday would make me forget him saying you are no longer worthy of me. I did not take the flowers, and I did not engage. I just turned and walked toward the lobby. He yelled from behind, Sarah, are you really this cold? You will not even accept my flowers? I stopped, turned around, and enunciated every word. Luke, we are not friends, and we never will be. Stop coming to find me. I do not want to have security drag you away. His face turned bright red. His lips trembled, but no words came out. He stood outside the glass doors, holding the bouquet like a clown, while pedestrians pointed and whispered. He lowered his head, tossed the flowers into a nearby trash can, and walked away. Watching him leave, I felt no sympathy, no sadness, just the profound relief of total closure. From that day on, Luke never sought me out again. He must have heard from somewhere that I had taken over the company and become one of the youngest female CEOs in the industry, managing billions of dollars in projects. He must have seen my photo on the cover of financial magazines, wearing a sharp blazer with a steely gaze, looking nothing like the woman who used to scrub his kitchen counters. Later, I heard from Mrs. Higgins, my old neighbor from the suburbs, that Luke's small business completely folded. He was drowning in debt, and his apartment was foreclosed on. His parents flew in from their hometown and berated him for being a disgrace, yelling that if he had just been a good husband to me, He never would have ended up in this nightmare. Jessica had bolted long ago. Rumor was she moved back to her rural hometown and married a long-haul truck driver, living paycheck to paycheck. Over the phone, Mrs. Higgins said, "Sarah, you really showed them. When Luke treated you like that, all of us neighbors were furious for you. Now look at you. You are a big boss, and he is a rat in the gutter." "That is karma," I smiled. "Mrs. Higgins, it is not karma. It is just the consequences of his own actions. I never planned to ruin him. I just chose to protect myself when I was attacked." After hanging up, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows in my office, watching the city skyline. The sunset painted the sky orange, like a massive oil painting. I remembered the version of myself from 2 years ago, scrubbing dishes in the kitchen. I remembered the phone call that shattered my reality, and the man who told me to get lost. Back then, I thought the sky was falling. I thought my life was over. I thought I could never stand back up, but I didn't collapse. I stood up, and I stood taller than anyone else. A woman's greatest achievement is not marrying well, but having the ability to build a magnificent life even after being betrayed. I did not get to where I am just because of my father. He gave me the platform, but I climbed every single step myself. The $500 million contract Luke lost was one I gave him, and one I could take away. He thought he climbed the ladder himself, not realizing I was the one holding it steady the entire time. My first birthday without Luke, I spent alone. I bought myself a bouquet of sunflowers and put them in a vase in the living room. I cooked a massive feast for myself: steak, roasted asparagus, clam chowder, and a fresh salad. I sat at the dining table, poured myself a glass of wine, and whispered, "Happy birthday, Sarah. Thank you for finally waking up." Later on, I met many men and turned down many suitors. Some were young and ambitious, some were mature and steady, some were gentle and kind. But I did not give myself away easily again. Not out of fear, but because I finally understood that a woman's greatest happiness does not come from finding a man to make her whole. It comes from being whole all on your own. When you are strong enough, you do not need to lean on anyone. You become your own mountain. I heard Luke eventually got a job doing manual labor on the docks down on the Gulf Coast. They said he hauled crates all day for barely minimum wage. His hands were covered in calluses. His face was tanned and weathered. He looked nothing like the ambitious executive he once was. People said when he got drunk, he would hug a telephone pole and cry, screaming my name. They said he asked about me, and when he heard I was the CEO of Sterling Enterprises, he went numb, then sat in the dirt and wept for hours. Hearing this, I felt no vindication and no pity. I just felt that this is how life works. Everyone pays the price for their choices. He chose betrayal, humiliation, and treating me like garbage. Everything he was suffering now was exactly what he earned. And Jessica, the mistress? I heard her life with the truck driver was miserable. The man had a gambling problem and beat her when he lost. She ended up in the hospital multiple times. When people told her to leave him, she said, "Where would I go?" Her family disowned her, her in-laws hated her, and she did not even have a place to sleep. She used to think hooking Luke would guarantee her a life of luxury. What she did not know is that things stolen from others never truly belong to you. Sometimes I wondered, if Luke had never made that phone call, if I had never revealed my identity, would we still be together? The answer is no. Because a person's core nature does not change. He was rotten at his core. Money made his ego swell, and success made him lose his mind. If he did not betray me then, he would have done it later. If he didn't tell me to get lost that day, he would have done it the next. That phone call just exposed him earlier. Looking at it that way, I should actually thank him. Thank him for making that call and showing me his true colors. Thank him for telling me to get lost so I could start over. Thank him for his betrayal, which taught me that a woman's only true reliance is herself. Now, I work 12-hour days. I manage thousands of employees. I handle billions in contracts and deal with the top minds across every industry. I expanded the company into international markets, tripled our annual revenue, and pushed Sterling Enterprises into the top 3 corporations nationwide. A financial magazine interviewed me under the headline, "From Housewife to Billion-Dollar CEO, Her 2-Year Comeback." I read the article, smiled at the reporter, and said, "It was never a comeback. I just learned how to fly while being pushed off a cliff." The reporter used that quote as the tagline for the issue. People shared it everywhere. They called it inspiring. But only I knew how much it hurt the moment I took flight. But after the pain came a complete rebirth. I am telling this story not to complain and not to seek revenge. I just want to tell anyone going through something similar. No matter how hard it is right now, do not give up on yourself. Being betrayed is not terrifying. What is terrifying is believing you deserve to be betrayed. Being hurt is not terrifying. What is terrifying is accepting that pain as your normal. You are no one's accessory. You are not a disposable rag. You are not garbage to be tossed aside. You are your own light, and you can illuminate your own path. The day the courts officially foreclosed on the last of Luke's assets, I was leading a board meeting. My assistant quietly walked in and whispered in my ear, "Boss, Luke's assets have been fully seized. The marshals just cleared out his old apartment." I nodded and motioned for her to leave. After the meeting, I stood alone in my office, looking at the overcast sky. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Sarah, it is Luke. I know you do not want to talk to me, but I still want to say I am sorry. If I could do it all over again, I never would have treated you like that. I hope you have a happy life." I stared at the text for a long time. Then I picked up the phone, called my security detail, and said, "Track the origin of this text and block the number. I do not want any messages from him ever again. Yes, block everything." I hung up, set the phone down, and walked to the window. The sky had cleared up without me noticing. Sunlight pierced through the clouds, painting the city in gold. I looked at the light and smiled. "Luke, you asked what I would do if I could do it all over again. I will tell you. If I could do it all over again, I would never have met you. But since life does not offer do-overs, I do not regret knowing you. Because you taught me the most important lesson in the world. The only person who will never betray you is yourself. Loving yourself is more important than anything else." That evening, I received an unexpected email. The sender was a name I did not recognize, but attached was an image of a bank wire transfer. The amount was $300,000. The recipient was Luke's company. The sender was a shell corporation. The date of the transfer was exactly 3 days before Luke told me he had signed the $500 million contract. My finger froze on the mouse. My mind raced as I stared at the receipt. The $500 million contract was with my father's company, but Luke's startup lacked the capacity to execute a project of that scale. He would have needed massive upfront capital to even begin. Who wired him $300,000? Why 3 days before the contract was signed? What else was hiding in the shadows? I picked up my phone and called Arthur, the general counsel. "Arthur, I need you to run a background check on someone. Pull every company and financial record connected to them." "Yes, it relates to the contract we gave Luke." Arthur asked, "Miss Sterling, what do you suspect?" I leaned back in my chair, staring at the darkening sky outside. I said slowly, "I suspect that $500 million deal was never negotiated by Luke at all. Someone else was pulling the strings." Arthur went quiet for a moment before replying, "Understood. I will put a team on it immediately." After hanging up, I sat completely still. The city lights began to flicker on outside. I remembered Luke's tone that day, so smug, so arrogant, so euphoric with the belief that he had finally conquered the world. He thought he secured that massive deal on his own merit. But what if the whole thing was a trap set by someone else? What if he was just a pawn? If that was true, then tearing up the contract did not ruin him, it actually saved him. I thought about Jessica. I thought about the timing of her appearance, and how Luke's ego had inflated the moment they got together. Was she really just a gold-digging mistress? Or was she planted by someone with an ulterior motive? A mere cosmetics saleswoman could not possibly make the kind of promises that would convince Luke to immediately divorce me. The more I thought about it, the more things did not add up. I called my dad. "Dad, I suspect someone manipulated Luke's $500 million contract behind the scenes." Think back. How exactly did that contract land on his desk? Who recommended him? My dad paused, then said, "It was an old associate of mine. Richard Harrison. He runs Harrison Construction." "Does he know Luke?" I asked. "I am not entirely sure," my dad said. "But at the time, Richard told me Luke was a promising young guy with a lot of drive, and that he deserved a shot." Richard Harrison. I quickly ran through Luke's social circle in my head. He did know a Richard Harrison in the construction business. Luke had even taken me to dinner with him once. Richard had seemed friendly and polite, but I always felt an unsettling vibe from him, like his eyes were evaluating me as a piece of property. "Dad, what is Richard Harrison's full business profile?" I asked. My dad gave me the details. I wrote them down and immediately texted Arthur. "Focus the investigation on Richard Harrison. I want his connections to Luke, his financial history, and every shell company he owns. Leave no stone unturned." After sending the message, another memory hit me. When Luke demanded the divorce, he was absolute. He left no room for negotiation, acting as if his future was utterly secure. What was his safety net? Was it the $500 million contract? Was it Jessica? Or was it Richard Harrison? Why would a construction mogul meddle in a startup founder's marriage? Suddenly, Luke's betrayal felt far more sinister than a simple case of a man letting money go to his head. The investigation took a week, and the results shocked everyone. When Arthur placed the thick dossier on my desk, his expression was grim, as if he hesitated to let me see it. I opened to the first page. It was a complex web of corporate connections, and right in the center was the name Richard Harrison. Richard Harrison, 63, owner of Harrison Construction. On paper, a building materials supplier. But in reality, he controlled dozens of shell companies spanning logistics, real estate, and trade. He had known Luke for 3 years and was his initial angel investor. Luke's first major client was introduced by Richard. Luke's first bank loan was co-signed by Richard, but the report revealed their relationship went much deeper. Over the past 2 years, Richard had secretly funneled over $5 million into Luke's company through offshore shell accounts. This money was not a gift. Every single wire came attached with a toxic venture equity clause, a gambling agreement. If Luke failed to hit impossible revenue targets within a specific time frame, he would forfeit his entire company to Richard. But the most shocking part was the truth about the $500 million contract. Page 14 of the dossier contained a screenshot of an email sent by Richard's executive assistant to a mid-level director at Sterling Enterprises. The email read, "Please expedite the partnership between Luke's firm and Sterling Enterprises. You will be heavily compensated upon completion." That specific director was someone my father had personally promoted 3 years ago. He was fired last year for embezzlement, and the stolen funds perfectly matched offshore wire transfers sent by Richard's shell companies. In other words, Luke did not win the contract because of his brilliance. He won it because Richard Harrison bribed a Sterling Enterprises executive to push it through. Richard did not want Luke to succeed. He wanted Luke to take on a massive project he could not handle, trigger the toxic equity clauses, and default. Richard intended to swallow Luke's company whole. And Jessica? The report laid it out in black and white. She was Richard's longtime mistress. Richard placed her next to Luke for 2 reasons. First, to monitor his every move. Second, to sabotage our marriage and force me out. Richard knew that Sterling Enterprises only tolerated Luke because of me. If I was removed from the picture, Luke would lose his only shield, leaving Richard free to consume his company without my father interfering. I gripped the edges of the report. From start to finish, Luke was nothing but a pawn. He thought he was the grandmaster. He thought signing the deal made him untouchable. He thought Jessica actually loved him. He never realized his contract was bought with bribes, his mistress was a corporate spy, and his peak was actually a carefully dug grave. The greatest irony was that if he had not made that drunken phone call to humiliate me, if I had not exposed my identity and forced my father to cancel the deal, Richard's plan would have worked flawlessly. Luke would have taken the contract, failed the metrics, lost his equity, and been kicked to the curb with millions in personal debt. My phone call, my impulsive demand to kill the contract, accidentally thwarted Richard's entire scheme. The cancellation cost Luke his business, but it freed him from the toxic debt trap. He lost everything, but he saved himself from utter ruin. I set the report down, leaned back, and let out a long breath. The office was quiet except for the ticking clock on the wall. I stared at the crystal chandelier and laughed. Destiny is a twisted thing. I thought I was taking revenge on Luke, but I was actually saving his life. I thought I was destroying him, but I was pulling him out of a much deeper abyss. Even so, I did not regret a thing. "Boss, what is our next move?" Arthur asked, standing across the desk. I sat up straight and closed the folder. "Compile the evidence of Richard Harrison's bribery and hand it over to the federal authorities. Include the proof that Jessica was acting as his operative. As for Luke," I paused, considering it. "He did not know the truth. He was used. But that does not absolve him of what he did. His betrayal was real. Telling me to get lost was real. Let the courts process his remaining debts as normal." Arthur nodded and turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "Miss Sterling, should we inform Luke about Richard? He deserves to know." I was silent for a moment. "Mail him a copy of the files anonymously. Let him know the truth, but do not let him know it came from us." Arthur nodded again and left. As the door clicked shut, I walked to the window. The sky was a brilliant blue, clouds drifting lazily by. Traffic flowed steadily below. The city was operating as usual. Nobody knew that at this desk, I had just made decisions that would alter several lives forever. I pulled out my phone and found Luke's number. It was not saved in my contacts anymore, but I still knew it by heart. I had never blocked it, but I had never dialed it again either. My thumb hovered over the screen for a long time. Eventually, I locked the phone and put it back in my pocket. There was nothing left to say. The truth belonged to him, but my life belonged to me. A week later, Luke received the anonymous package. I had Arthur arrange for it to be mailed to the cheap apartment he was renting. It contained the evidence of Richard's bribery, the toxic equity contracts, photos of Jessica and Richard together, and a detailed timeline showing exactly how Richard had groomed, funded, and ultimately planned to destroy him. That night, a text popped up on my phone. It was from Luke. "Sarah, I know it was you." I did not reply. Another text came. I read the files. I was played for 2 years. Jessica was Richard's spy. The contract was a setup. I was an absolute idiot from start to finish. I did not reply. A third text followed closely. "I know you do not want to talk to me, but you need to know how much I regret everything. Not just losing the contract. I regret that phone call. If I had not made that call, you would not have left. You would not have revealed who you were. The contract would have gone through, and Richard would have destroyed me. That phone call saved my life. Do you realize that?" I stared at the message for a long time. He was right. If he hadn't called, everything would have played out exactly as Richard planned. The phone call meant to humiliate me ended up being his salvation. What a sick joke by the universe. I typed out a single sentence. "I did not save you. I was only protecting myself." I hit send, then tossed the phone aside, ignoring whatever else he wrote. For the next few days, Luke's texts flooded in. I ignored all of them. He said he confronted Richard, who denied everything. He said he almost got into a fistfight with him. He said Jessica fled back to her hometown and he had no intention of tracking her down. He said he had handed the $5 million fraudulent equity contracts over to a lawyer to sue Richard for fraud. He said he wanted to see me, just once, to apologize face to face. I never answered. Some things cannot be fixed with an apology. When he held Jessica and told me to get lost, did he think about apologizing? When he celebrated in that hotel room, did he think he would ever regret it? When he told me to walk away with nothing, did he think he would ever beg me to come back? Life does not offer what-ifs, only consequences. At the end of the month, Sterling Enterprises hosted a massive industry summit at the city's top luxury hotel. As the lead organizer, I wore a sleek black pantsuit, my hair pulled back into a neat bun, with minimalist makeup. I looked sharp and professional. My father was feeling unwell, so he handed the entire event over to me. The ballroom was packed with over 300 industry titans and executives. I stood at the podium, delivering the keynote address. My voice was steady, laying out Sterling Enterprises' strategic vision clearly and confidently. The room was silent. People were listening intently, some taking notes. Halfway through my speech, I noticed a man slip into the very back row and sit in a dark corner. He was wearing a faded gray jacket, his hair was overgrown, and he looked like he hadn't shaved in days. I recognized Luke immediately, but I did not break my rhythm. I finished my speech to polite applause, then stepped down to mingle. I spent the next hour shaking hands, exchanging business cards, and smiling professionally, though my mind occasionally drifted to the man in the back row. By the time I finished networking, the ballroom was mostly empty. I walked to the back row. Luke was still sitting there, staring at his knees, waiting. "Luke," I said. He looked up. His eyes were red, like he had been crying. His lips trembled before he finally spoke. "Sarah, you have changed." "I haven't changed," I replied. "You just never really knew who I was." He offered a bitter smile and shook his head. "You are right, I never truly looked at you. I thought you were just a housewife. I thought you depended on me. I thought I could toss you aside whenever I wanted. Now I realize how completely wrong I was." "Did you come all the way here just to tell me that?" I asked. He shook his head again and pulled a thick manila envelope from his jacket, holding it out to me. When I didn't take it, he placed it on the empty chair beside him. "What is this?" I asked. "Evidence against Richard Harrison. More complete than what you sent me," he said. "I spent the last 2 weeks digging up every dirty thing Richard has done over the past few years. His bribes to Sterling executives, his wire transfers to Jessica, his money laundering fronts, it is all in there. I figured you could use it." I stared at the thick envelope for a few seconds. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because you deserve it." He looked at me with an earnestness I had never seen in him before. "Because you are the best thing that ever happened to me. I ruined it, and I cannot fix it. But I can help you. Richard wants to destroy your father's company, and I will not let him." I picked up the envelope. It was heavy. I looked at him. "Luke, do you know that if this evidence is real, Richard could go away for over 10 years? Do you also know that by giving this to me, you are burning your own bridges? Richard is deeply connected in this industry. If you cross him, you will never work in this field again." "I know," he said, his voice quiet but resolute, "but I do not care anymore. I have nothing left to lose. I just want to finish what needs to be finished and pay the debts I owe. I put the envelope in my bag and nodded. Fine. I will have my team verify this. If it is legitimate, I will take action. He looked at me, hesitating, before finally asking the question he had been holding back. Sarah, is there any chance for us? I looked into his eyes. I saw hope, regret, and desperate pleading, but I no longer saw the man I had once loved. That version of Luke died the moment he told me I was unworthy of him. No, I said, my voice as calm as discussing the weather. Luke, it has been over for a long time. I appreciate what you are doing now, but gratitude is not love. I will not come back to you just because I am thankful, and I will not love you again just because you are trying to be a better man. What happened between us is in the past. Let it stay there. His eyes welled up with tears. He tried to speak but could not. He bowed his head, his shoulders shaking slightly. After a long moment, he looked up, wiped his eyes, and forced a broken smile. Okay, I understand. I hope you find happiness. Take care of yourself, I said. He turned and walked away. His posture was slumped, a shadow of the ambitious executive he once was. I watched him disappear through the hotel doors. I felt no sorrow, no heartache, only a profound sense of peace. It was like watching a stranger walk away. Back in my car, I opened the envelope. It was packed with bank statements, contract photocopies, printed emails, and photographs. One photo showed Richard and Jessica on a beach vacation, laughing together. The sight was glaring. I handed the files over to Arthur to verify and process. Arthur reviewed the documents and looked up, his face serious. Miss Sterling, this is far more comprehensive than what we had. If this is verified, Richard will get at least 10 years. Who gave you this? A friend, I said. Arthur did not press further. Things moved quickly after that. Once the evidence was submitted to the federal prosecutors, Richard Harrison was indicted. 3 months later, he went to trial. Found guilty of corporate bribery, fraud, and money laundering, Richard was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. All of his assets and shell companies were seized. The construction mogul who once controlled the industry was now a federal inmate. Jessica, while not directly implicated in the bribery, was investigated for receiving illicit funds. She lost her job as a cashier at a rural grocery store. Her husband's family kicked her out of shame. She reportedly tried to find Luke again, but he refused to see her. As for Luke, after handing me the files, he vanished. Not entirely from the world, but entirely from my life. He stopped texting, stopped waiting outside my office, and stopped appearing anywhere near me. I heard from Mrs. Higgins that he left the city and moved down to the Gulf Coast. He got a job at the docks, loading and unloading cargo, making maybe $3,000 a month. Over the phone, Mrs. Higgins sighed. Sarah, why did he have to ruin his life like this? If he had just appreciated you, none of this would have happened. I smiled but did not answer. Why? Because people have to walk the path they choose, even if it destroys them. Luke chose the wrong path. He realized it halfway down, but there was no turning back. All he could do was keep walking to the end, and hopefully find a new road to start over. I did not hate him anymore. I used to hate him. I hated him enough to want him dead. But seeing him sitting in the back of that ballroom, too ashamed to look at me, and hearing he was breaking his back on the docks, the hatred faded. Hating someone is exhausting. It takes more energy than loving someone. I refused to waste any more time hating him. I had more important things to do, like growing my father's company, like forcing my dad to get a full medical checkup because his stomach had been bothering him, like turning the page on my messy past and focusing entirely on the future. 3 months later, Sterling Enterprises officially broke ground on the $2 billion green energy campus. As the project lead, I attended the press conference. I wore a simple white dress, my hair flowing loose, wearing soft makeup. I looked much more relaxed than usual. After the ceremony, a reporter chased me down. Miss Sterling, rumor has it your ex-husband lost a $500 million contract because of your divorce and later went bankrupt. Do you have any comment? I looked at the reporter, smiled, and gave a quote that the media circulated for weeks. He did not lose $500 million. He lost someone who truly loved him. As for me, I only lost someone who did not love me. Who do you think lost more? The reporter was stunned, then nodded furiously. I did not say another word, stepping into my car and telling the driver to take me home. As the car rolled through the familiar streets, passing the neighborhood where Luke and I used to live, I glanced out the window. The buildings were the same. The local diner was still there. Mrs. Higgins was probably still watering her plants on the balcony. Everything was exactly as it had been, except I was no longer a part of it. Life goes on. People come and go. Disasters happen and then they pass. You think the sky is falling, but it never really does. The only thing that falls are the walls in your own mind. Once the walls collapse, the sunlight can finally reach you. The car pulled into a quiet, upscale suburb and stopped in front of a modern two-story house with a small garden. I had planted sunflowers in the front yard. I got out, unlocked the door, and walked inside. The house was quiet. A fresh bouquet of lilies sat on the coffee table sent by my father. The attached card read, "Hard work pays off, sweetheart. Come home for dinner this weekend." I smiled, holding the card. My phone buzzed. It was a voice memo from Mrs. Higgins. "Sarah, you will never guess who I saw today. Jessica. She is back in town, working at the farmer's market. She looked completely ragged, wearing old clothes. I purposely bought vegetables from her stand, and she did not even recognize me. Want me to send you a picture?" I texted back. "No need, I have no interest in Jessica. Her misery is none of my business. She chose her fate, and I don't need to waste my emotions on her." I put my phone down, tied an apron around my waist, and started making dinner. I had steak, fish, and greens in the fridge. I decided on pan-seared steak, roasted asparagus, and a side salad. Even eating alone, I made sure to treat myself well. As I washed the vegetables, my phone buzzed again. I thought it was Mrs. Higgins, but it was an unknown number. The text read, "Sarah, I am working at the docks. I am doing okay. Don't worry about me." I stared at the message for a few seconds, then deleted it. I did not reply. "Luke, whether you are doing well or not has nothing to do with me anymore. You did not wrong the woman I am today. You wronged the woman I used to be. And she is gone. The woman I am now will not cry over you, will not feel bad for you, and will not let her heart skip a beat at the sight of your name." I put the phone in my pocket and went back to cooking. Outside, the sky grew dark, and the streetlights flickered on. This was my life now, quiet, peaceful, and grounded. True success isn't just making money. It is having the grace to face your past and the courage to step into your future. And I had done exactly that. After dinner, I sat on the patio drinking hot tea and looking at the stars. My phone rang. It was Arthur, sounding anxious. "Miss Sterling, we have a problem. Richard Harrison told his lawyers he possesses sensitive documents implicating internal Sterling executives in illicit dealings with Luke's company. He is threatening to leak them to the press if we do not do him a favor." My hand froze, the teacup hovering near my mouth. "What kind of documents?" He wouldn't say. He just said if we do not help him, he will ruin Sterling's reputation. I set the cup down and stood up, looking at the city skyline. "Arthur," I said, "tomorrow morning I am going to the Federal Detention Center. I am going to talk to Richard myself. Miss Sterling, he is a dangerous man. You should not go alone, I know. I am not going alone. You are coming with me, and bring William, our corporate litigator." I hung up, washed my cup, turned off the lights, and got into bed. I closed my eyes, but my mind was racing. What did Richard have? If a Sterling executive was doing dirty deals with Luke's company, who was it? Was it the guy who had already been fired? Or someone else? Did my dad know? Questions flooded my mind, but I forced myself to sleep. Tomorrow's problems belong to tomorrow. At 7:00 a.m., I woke up, got dressed in a sharp suit, ate breakfast, and walked out the door by 8:00. Arthur's car was waiting. William, the litigator, was in the passenger seat holding a thick file. "Good morning, Miss Sterling," William said, adjusting his glasses. "I reviewed Richard's case files last night. The man is a snake. Do not trust a word he says, but do not dismiss him entirely either." I nodded, got into the back seat, and we drove to the detention center. After clearing security, we waited in the visitation room. Richard was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. His head was shaved, and he had lost a significant amount of weight. His cheekbones were sharp, his eyes sunken, but his gaze was still as piercing as a knife. He saw me and smirked. Well, Miss Sterling herself. What an honor. He sat down, his handcuffs clinking against the metal table. I looked at him, my voice flat. "Richard, you said you had files to send to the media. What are they? In a rush, aren't you?" He tilted his head, looking at me like I was a piece of property. "Sarah, you know what your greatest strength is? You are ice cold, and it is your biggest flaw. You were cold when you divorced your husband. You were cold when your dad killed the contract. You are cold sitting here right now. It makes people want to break you," William interjected. "Mr. Harrison, watch your tone." Richard scoffed, ignoring him. "Sarah, I do have files. Financial records between your ex-husband's company and your executives. Sterling Enterprises took bribes to issue that contract. It is corporate corruption. If I hand this to the Wall Street Journal, Sterling's stock will tank. Arthur frowned. You are bluffing. Sterling has strict compliance. Do not interrupt me, Richard snapped, staring at me. Let's cut to the chase. I can bury the files, but I need a favor. My daughter is attending an Ivy League university. With my assets frozen, her tuition is cut off. You set up a $500,000 trust fund for her education, and I will destroy the evidence. I stared into his eyes. I saw greed, cunning, and a faint trace of desperation. He was bluffing. If the files were truly nuclear, he wouldn't have waited this long, and he would have demanded far more than $500,000. He just wanted me to believe he held leverage. Show me the files, I demanded. Richard hesitated, then pulled a USB drive from his pocket and slid it across the table. William plugged it into his laptop. He opened a few PDFs and bank scans. His face went pale. Miss Sterling, look at this. William turned the laptop toward me. It was a wire transfer record. The sender was an offshore account. The recipient was a current vice president in Sterling's procurement division. The amount wasn't massive $50,000, but the memo line read, Partnership Sincerity Bonus. My heart sank, but my expression did not change. Richard, I looked up. Where did you get this? Does not matter, Richard sneered. 500 grand. Do we have a deal or not? I analyzed the document. The transfer happened 3 days after the contract was signed, not before. It looked more like a kickback than a bribe for securing the deal. And 50 grand was practically pocket change in corporate fraud. This record is incomplete, I stated firmly. Richard's expression faltered. If you had the full ledger, you would have provided it. You only gave us the receipt of the transfer, not the bank statements. I leaned in closer. Furthermore, $50,000 does not even meet the threshold for a federal corporate bribery investigation. You are bluffing. Richard's face hardened. He stayed silent, but the smugness vanished, replaced by the anger of being caught out. This was sent by your shell company, wasn't it? I continued. You wired him $50,000 as a sincerity bonus to keep as blackmail material for later. But before you could use it, you got locked up. Richard glared at me. This executive is corrupt, and we will handle him internally, I said. But you cannot hold Sterling Enterprises hostage with this. 50 grand is a localized HR issue, not a corporate scandal. As for your daughter's Ivy League tuition, I will pay it. Richard froze. You will pay it? Yes, I said. $500,000. You do not need to give me any more files, and you do not need to keep your mouth shut. Your daughter is innocent. She should not have to drop out of college because her father is a criminal. Consider it a charitable donation from Sterling Enterprises. Richard stared at me. His lips trembled, and suddenly, his eyes grew red. He looked down, his shoulders shaking slightly. When he looked back up, the cunning look was gone. Sarah, his voice was hoarse. You are more ruthless than anyone I have ever met, yet somehow completely decent. I am not ruthless, I said. I am just rational. You made your bed, you lie in it. But your kid doesn't deserve the fallout. Richard wiped his face. He let out a bitter laugh. Luke, that stupid bastard, he muttered. He never deserved you. I didn't respond. Leaving the facility, the sun was blinding. I took a deep breath of fresh air. Boss, Arthur said quietly behind me. Are you really paying that 500 grand from your personal account? Yes, I said. Do not run it through corporate. The girl is innocent. Arthur sighed. You have a soft heart. It is not a soft heart, I replied. It is a baseline of humanity. When I returned to the office, my assistant Chloe looked frantic. Boss, someone has been waiting in the lobby for 2 hours. It is Luke's mother. I stopped dead in my tracks. Luke's mother. The woman I had bathed and fed when she was hospitalized. The woman who sat in silence while her son demanded a divorce. Let her in, I told Chloe. A few minutes later, the older woman walked in. She looked 10 years older than the last time I saw her. Her hair was stark white, and she carried a worn fabric tote bag. Sarah, her voice shook, and her eyes immediately filled with tears. How have you been? I gestured to the sofa. Please sit. She sat down, clutching the bag tightly. I came to apologize to you today. For what? I asked. When Luke asked for a divorce, I didn't stop him, she sobbed. I knew he was wrong, but I thought it was his life, his choice. I didn't think about how good you were to our family. I was a terrible mother-in-law. I watched her cry. You were a terrible mother-in-law, I agreed flatly. She froze. But it does not matter anymore. We are divorced. You do not need to apologize. It changes nothing. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a small velvet box, placing it on the coffee table. It was the $1,000 check she had given me on our wedding day as a traditional welcoming gift. "I want to give this back to you," she said. "Keep it," I said. "When I called you Mom, I meant it. I took care of you because I cared. But that time is over. Keep the money. Luke needs it more than I do." I hear he is struggling on the docks. At the mention of Luke, she broke down entirely. "He knows he was wrong. He tells me every day that losing you is his biggest regret. Sarah, can you please just give him one more chance?" I looked at her pleading eyes. "No," I said firmly. "The past is the past. Go home. Take care of yourself and take care of him. We have nothing left to say." She realized I meant it. She slowly put the envelope back in her bag, stood up, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned and gave me a deep bow. "Thank you, Sarah." The door closed. The office was quiet. 2 years of marriage completely gone. Later that afternoon, I called William Vance, the corrupt vice president, into the conference room. He looked nervous. I slid the wire transfer receipt across the table. William looked at it and went pale. "Boss, Did you take the money?" I asked. He hung his head. "Yes. It was an offshore transfer from Richard's people. They forced it on me. I never touched the money. I was just too scared of Richard's connections to return it." I stared at him. He was a coward, not a mastermind. "I will give you one chance," I said. "Return the money today. Write a full confession and sign it. It goes in your file. If you ever step out of line again, I hand it to the FBI." He nodded frantically, tears in his eyes. "Thank you, Miss Sterling. I swear I will never do it again." That evening, Arthur called me. "Miss Sterling, I heard some news. Luke had an accident at the docks. A pallet of cargo fell and shattered his leg. He is in the local hospital down south, but he cannot afford the $8,000 surgical deposit." My pen stopped moving across the paper. "He is alone?" I asked. "Yes. No friends, no family nearby." I looked out the window at the sunset. "Pay the deposit," I said, "and leave $10,000 in an account for his recovery. Do it anonymously. Do not let the hospital tell him it was us." Arthur paused. "Boss, are you sure?" "It is not about feelings," I said. "I refuse to let someone I once loved die or go crippled in a hospital just because he is broke. It is about my own humanity. I will not become as cold as he was." That night, Mrs. Higgins texted me again, asking if I was still pining for Luke since I paid his medical bills. I replied, "I am not pining for him. I am protecting my own conscience." A month later, Sterling Enterprises held its annual corporate gala. It was grander than ever, with over 800 industry leaders in attendance. I wore a stunning crimson evening gown, standing beside my father as he took the stage. My father thanked our partners and then made the announcement. "Next year, I am retiring. I am handing the CEO position entirely over to my daughter, Sarah. I know she will lead this company better than I ever could." The room erupted in applause. Flashbulbs went off everywhere. I smiled, feeling the immense weight of the responsibility settling onto my shoulders. But I was ready for it. After the speeches, my assistant Chloe whispered, "Boss, someone is waiting in the VIP lounge for you." I walked over. A handsome man in his early 30s, wearing a tailored charcoal suit, stood up and offered his hand. "Miss Sterling, I am Daniel Reynolds, director at Reynolds Capital." I shook his hand and sat down. "Mr. Reynolds, are you here to discuss investments?" He smiled, pulling out a portfolio. "We want to partner on your green energy campus. We bring international tech partnerships to the table." He paused, his eyes locking onto mine with genuine interest. "And personally, I have been wanting to meet you for a very long time." I raised an eyebrow, amused by his forwardness. "Are we talking business, Mr. Reynolds, or are we making friends?" "Both," he said smoothly. "Why not both?" I laughed. "The business, my team will evaluate. As for the friendship, we have plenty of time." As I walked away, Chloe was practically vibrating with excitement. "Boss, he is gorgeous, successful, and single." I rolled my eyes playfully. "Focus on the work, Chloe." I looked out at the glittering ballroom. Daniel Reynolds was interesting, sure. But right now, my priority was the empire I was building. I had just crawled out of a deep pit, and I was not rushing to jump into anything else. I would take my time. After all, the best part of my life was just beginning.